Our meeting to order.
All right, do roll call. Director or Vice President Diamond.
Here.
Director Hetherington.
Here.
President Odette.
Here.
Director Rolfe.
Here.
And Director Stevens.
Here.
Okay. I don't think we have any modification of agenda. So public comment. Do we have anyone on the call or any write-in public comment for items not on this agenda?
I have no written public comment for items not listed on the agenda.
Okay. Then let's go right into budget presentation.
All right, well, thank you. Maybe, Emily, do you want to put the budget presentation up? Sorry, let me skip all that. So here today, this is our typical or annual kickoff to our 2022 budget process. And for those that may be new to this process or those that are tuning into our meeting, we adopt our budget in January we adopt it December for a January 1st, 2022 start. We're on a calendar year. And so this meeting is just kind of to start laying out some of the things that we need to talk about and we need to think about for 2022. Let me see if we got that presentation coming up. Do you want us to?
I can do it, Kevin. Just give me a second. I just wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't have it queued up.
Might be good because we'll be going back and forth between Kelly and I driving. We'll just tell you when to advance the slides. All right. Apologize. I think I've got it right here, Emily. Maybe I'll just do it and then I'll drive if that's okay. Just want to make sure I've got the most recent version. We'll put it up here. Do my screen share. And
I have it up too if you're ready, but I'll let you do it. It's okay.
All right. Does everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Let me swap that. Okay. Everyone sees a budget presentation. All right. All right. I'm adjusting my screen here real quick. All right. Now I can see everybody. Okay. Let me just take you through this. So as I was talking about, this is just objectives to review the budget January 1st to December 31st, 2022. We've got about 12 things that we call budget opportunities that we'll discuss. A couple of those, there's quite a few things in a few of those slides that we could talk about that are, some of them are annual expenditures or things that we may see just this year, and we'll go through that. But everybody's is available and open to give their thoughts and ideas, whether you're the public or the board, as we kind of go through this. The first preliminary budget and narrative will be presented on September 22nd. So in a month, we'll have the actual budget with numbers in there in the traditional format that you all see, and we'll use today's meeting as a guide to help us guide that process. So kind of how that process goes is September 22nd. I just talked about that, and then the second one, there'll be a second draft on October 27th. So we'll have a budget agenda item September 22nd, and we'll have another one on October 27th. And then if the board wants to do special meetings in between those to talk about budget items, we surely can. And then this year, it looks like our final budget approval will be December 1st. So we're looking at December 1st. As everyone knows, we have one meeting in November and December. And so December 1st is our November-December meeting date. We could also do that on December 8th if that's a better day for the board. We can talk about that in the next in the regular board meeting. But that's right now we've tentatively scheduled that for the 1st of December. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Kelly's going to take you through some of the revenue, kind of where we are, where we were, revenue that we've used, that we have, and expenditures. Kelly, you want to take it, and just tell me when you want me to advance, and I'll advance the slide. right, Kelly, we see you're in there, but I can't hear you.
So do we want to do questions as we go or do the whole?
Sure,
And then
that's fine. We could pause at each slide. Just trying to get some sound for Kelly.
So I'm just, with this operating revenues, this is not profit. This is revenues only.
Yes, it's just all revenue that the district has.
So hangar revenues are 1.9 million, but that doesn't account for the expense associated with hangars, or airside revenue, which is mostly fuel. That doesn't account for the expenses.
Yeah, there's another slide we'll get to that has the expenditures in there that kind of goes through some of those. That's the next slide I just put up, but I think Kelly's trying to connect her sound. You can see her email on there, but I can take us through this while she's working on that. Yeah, so you can see our operating revenues, 19 million now. Just remember that these operating revenues greatly fluctuate by federal grants, and so we did get about a $5 million federal grant this year, and that's why you see that number that's up there a little bit higher. You can see our property tax revenue that we expect by year end. It's probably going to tickle close to 7 million. And then the other one that will probably, we may outperform, maybe we can see Kelly now, she's coming on, is those airside revenues, particularly with fuel cells. In July, they were very, sold a lot of gas in July. August may even that out a little bit, because August, obviously, we're seeing very few operations right now, and we have for the last week or so, probably will into the near future. Kelly, feel free to jump in once you think your camera or your microphone's working. As Mary mentioned, that you see hangar revenues, and again, this is just the revenues, and then we'll go through the expenditures in just a second. Kelly, did you want to take over? Oh, still can't hear you, but that's okay. The other business leasing, and that's like rental cars and other different things that we different revenues that we have, and then the warehouse space rental you'll see there. So any questions on the operating revenues? Perfect. All right, and then expenditures, there you can see all the operating general and administrative expenditures. There's a lot in there, and you can actually see all those in our budget package for the next meeting. There's all the different places that we expend money in those the general operating administrative expenses. Then you have repair maintenance. Obviously, we include depreciation in there. The cost of goods sold, that is primarily fuel. There's a lot of cost of goods sold there, $2 million of fuel and other products, but again, mostly fuel. And then you can see our payroll, employment, and benefits, which includes pensions and all those other types of things in the expenditure side. So any questions on that one?
I just, in thinking ahead, we're going through this cost allocation study, and to really have a firm number in terms of, and this is looking ahead for next year, for 2022, when we say, in the May meeting, it was brought up that we made 1.9 million in hangars, which is showing here, but that doesn't include the debt service. It doesn't include maintenance on the hangars. And for us to really have that sense of net revenue, I would like to see it kind of those particular things, what broken out specifically. And since we'll have paper data tied in from this allocation study for 2022, we should be able to have another pie chart that shows, net revenue for those two things at least.
Agree. No, the allocation study is, as we've mentioned, is the way we can actually tell, do we make money on hangars? We see 1.8 million in revenue, but when you take into account all the costs and everything else that is associated with those, do we actually generate revenue on those? And past allocation studies have helped us with that. It's the same thing with fuel cells and all those things. That's one thing we're curious about, particularly like with FBO services or things like that.
So,
Mary wants revenue and expense as a line item or analysis on what is our business in hangars in profit and loss, revenue and expense.
and same thing with fuel.
Same thing with everything.
You know, because operating G&A is just big. Payroll and employee benefits is just big. Whereas we can assign those things after this cost allocation study, we can actually tie to cost to deliver fuel, what it costs to maintain hangars, etc.
No, you understand, those will all be things the allocation study will tell us. Are you saying then take that and put it in the budget document?
Yeah,
Or
I
like
think that
line items in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the budget, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, if your microphone's working yet, but the budget document may not include everything, and it may not be organized exactly how the allocation study is. So we'd have to kind of look at that with you and see how we would blend those, if that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it would not. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Hooray. So sorry, technology today. It would not. So it's a traditional, this budget follows a traditional profit and loss statement. So it's here's what our revenues are, here's what our expenses are, here's what our net income is. We can then analyze it to look at here's what our fuel revenue was, and here's what our cost of goods was to get to our net fuel revenue, or net fuel income, but that's not how the budget is built.
Understand, the budget is also a public document for people to wade through pages and pages of an Excel document, significant ask for the public, where I have a next pie chart or break out the pie on operating expenditures that say these are the operating expenditures hangar, these are the operating expenditures and fuel. That is useful for the general public all together.
Mary, your sound is breaking up.
Shoot. Is this better if I get closer?
Yes?
Much.
Not much?
Yes.
Very much.
Better.
Okay. What I'm getting at is that operating G&A and payroll and employee benefits just are big. And I don't see what money we're really making on fuel. After the cost allocation study, I will know how much time is used by staff. Therefore, I can actually get a real number on what we're getting on fuel. Same thing with hangars. And so in this pie chart of operating expenditures, to break out specific for hangar and specific for fuel. And my overall arching to this was that for the general public to wade through those pages and pages of Excel spreadsheet to figure out budget is a big ask. Pie charts capture it. And that's why I would like to know. I think it's very useful for the general public because this is a public document. That's why I want to see the breakout of net revenue.
So are you thinking just in maybe some pie charts within like the budget narrative, we could break that out based on that? I don't think that'd be hard to do.
I'm thinking we have this operating expenditures, we break out payroll and employee benefits, which includes everything that some of it's not hangars or fuel.
Breaking up.
I don't know what to do here then.
Put on a headset and plug it into your iPad.
Okay, I'll try that.
I don't actually think
Mary,
it's Mary's
until we get these allocation studies, there's no way to show anyone, the public or all of us, an exact number on fuel, because like we've talked about in the past, here's how much we made in fuel. Here's how much it costs us to buy it from AbFuel. But there are so many other factors that go into the selling of fuel that we can't just stick a number. It's not just revenue minus cost of goods equals this number. There's a lot more associated with it, and with all of those other things, like hangars, for example. It's not only hangar R&M, it's the labor associated with it. It's all kinds of stuff.
And we don't have that information for the 2021 budget, but we will have it for the 2022 budget because we're finishing the cost allocation study. So we should have it for then. And that's what I'm saying. For the 2022 budget, I would like those numbers broken out.
I guess the question that we're trying to figure out is how would you like that presented? Are you thinking in the narrative section we could put some pie charts that show that information based on some of the things we learned in the allocation study, or I'm just not clear if we're taking
Okay, so
budget
I'm looking,
document and breaking that down all those line items to move things around, and because I don't think we as a staff are able to retool the whole budget around that because it's not clear how we would do it.
I understand. I'm looking at the operating expenditure sheet right here, right, that
Yeah.
you have up on there.
Yeah.
Instead of payroll and employee benefits, you could have it broken into 2 sections or 3 sections. Payroll and employee benefits general, payroll and employee benefits hangar, payroll and employee benefits associated with fuel. Same thing with operating and general administrative. That also can be broken out. Somehow, or a third pie chart.
Yeah, I follow you with pie charts. Those aren't hard. I mean, we can look through and see some ways to do that in the narrative. I don't see a problem with being able to describe something.
This is just like me asking for the P&L on the WAB, and you can do that. The difference is we don't have right now the allocation of the G&A costs and maintenance costs to add to that for hangars and other things.
Yeah.
But we should have it after the cost allocation study is done.
Should.
Yeah, no, it'll tell us a lot of things there. Yeah, so I think on that side, I don't see a problem with us being able to provide some pie charts that break those things out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Kelly, do you want to keep rolling?
Sure. Let's see. So this next slide is just going through our capital and operating reserves. You've seen that first column. That's what we just approved in our unrestricted net asset chat that we had a couple months ago after the audit. So that was our 12/31 ending cash and kind of where we'd like to allocate it. And then Kevin has updated the numbers on the right side for the 5-year, pushing it out. Not necessarily 5 times, but what we're thinking we would like for 5 years.
Yeah, and just real quick, some of these numbers are right out of our, some of our maintenance facility plans. Some of them, we've talked about over the years with like property acquisition or annoyance reduction, community, programs reserves. Some of the math doesn't add up, 5 times, 500,000 is 2.5 million. But we at times have set these 5-year goals and talked about them. But those can be just about, however we want to allocate. The part of the reason we do that 5-year funding needs is to show the community, why we have reserves. And that's something that's just basic government. What we want to do is show some of these expenditures coming up and why we have reserves. So.
And my only comment on this is, I'm curious when Brandley comes back with the pavement management plan question that we brought up at the last meeting that could adjust this 5-year capital operating funding needs. And also a lot of that 16.8 million, a lot of it is often funded by the federal government if we pursue those.
That's correct. That's just a pie chart of the same thing. You can see the payment maintenance capital reserves. It's pretty high. It's higher than some years in the past, primarily because in that 5-year capital project plan, there is work in there for runway 220 and taxiway golf. And so whether or not we do those, we have a design grant to do the 220 project now. That wouldn't fund until 2023, and then in 2025 is when the FAA has programmed taxiway golf. But obviously, as we've talked about that involves moving a building, and so whether or not we do that would dictate whether or not taxiway golf is redone. Those 2 projects alone are about 10 million of that $16 million, and 90% of that would be federally funded. All right. So, good. I'll start maybe just taking you through these 12 opportunities. We talk about each one as we go. So we have 950,000 that we're planning for our annual pavement maintenance projects. The only pavement project we have kind of in the works is this West Side Hangar Row access project where we expand the parking lot for the warehouse and then put in a new gate over on that side. As you remember, I was hoping that'd be about $450, and when we originally did an estimate for that going almost 2 years ago, that's about what we thought it was. We are seeing right now exponential growth in construction costs. We just got costs on the snowmelt system, which was about 40% higher than what our engineer's estimate was. Very hard time to build, and it even has got me in a position where maybe we want to wait, on some of these construction projects a little bit. But will prices go down in the future? Is hard to know. But we did want to propose that and put that in the budget to hopefully get that done. We think if we can bid it early, December, January, February, right in there for a May or June start, we may get a better price. The other thing is our AIP grant. It's about $400,000 to do the 220 design, or 410. You can see there design work, which is 100%. That grant's 100% funded. So questions on pavement?
So
The increase in cost on this new access point, it's almost double. It's not 40% higher. It's almost double.
It has. It's. I think I've got a slide here. Let me go to the next slide. The next slide is that's that project. I put that in there. It looks like this. It's where you. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good question. All right. So I'll, at least for now, I guess what I'm hearing is let's talk about that the 220 additional design funding in September.
and putting a hold on any work they're doing now.
Is that what the board would like, me to hold the design grant? That I see
would
two
agree.
heads
You're talking
nodding. I don't
about
see anyone else.
on design?
Yeah, we have a design grant. So just for clarity, it's not a big deal for me to call Damon and say, hey, we may make some modifications to what we're going to design at the end of September. I don't think it'll affect his schedule at all. I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page with that.
I say put it on hold.
I agree.
Until after a discussion in September.
Yes. So is that what everyone's okay?
I'm okay with that. As long as they're not giving anything up.
Yeah, it won't affect the overall schedule. I mean, Brandley's priority was getting this project done out behind us that is now complete, and then they'll move into that design work. And again, it gets designed this year, it gets bid. It's actually not funded until 2023. So, okay, let me get rid of some stuff, clean up some screen stuff here.
Did we come to consensus on the $950 for the extra pavement and gate
So,
to the warehouse?
I didn't weigh in on that because I'm trying to follow the conversation bouncing around from slide to slide on that. I mean, I would feel right now, based on the fact that budget or that estimate got so crazy in such a short time, that I would prefer to hold off on any huge expenditures like that are not absolutely necessary to do right now. Again, until we have more conversations about our bigger plans, because we don't know where we're going to need money. And that if that is considered an optional $1 million of expenditure, we might find that we need it someplace else, or we could send it to CalPERS, or I'd like to put that in more perspective, because it is, as Rick mentioned, that's a huge difference in such a short period of time.
And you could leave it in the budget, but until the bid comes in, don't decide to do it or not do it. We have another gate to go through before the work starts.
yeah.
All you're talking about is leaving it in there and then bidding it and then see the real number, and then we would decide.
So we've already designed it, and so we can bid it and get a price. And then what I would suggest is we can put the money in the budget as a flagged item and then see what it looks like in the September preliminary budget. We can take it out in September if we don't like what the overall numbers look like, but we already have designed it, and that's okay. We can put it on the shelf, and we'll the design will be, and we have permitting from Nevada County, which is good for 7 years. So we haven't wasted any money, but we have it and we could bid it at very little cost.
But wouldn't, like, right now, I mean, just knowing what's going on in the world, especially in the construction world, we kind of know the bid right now is going to be crazy, right? So maybe it's something better to just put on ice until the beginning of the year and just see where we are with regard to workforce, and if we can get something reasonable, or if we, if it becomes super pressing from a security issue or something like that. But it seems to me my takeaway from it right now is that at half that price, the original bid of that we would have a discussion about, well, do we need it? Is it important? And now we're talking about twice the money, which to me suggests this is a really good thing to put on ice right now.
Okay, so I guess my question would be then, you don't want it at all? Just forget about it in any budget programming, or do you want to see it in a preliminary version of the budget and see what the numbers look like and then pull it out, or what would you like?
I mean, for me, I would, if it were at that original half the price thing, I would be like saying, like, yeah, let's put this in the budget for 2022 and get a bid and see where we're at. But if we're expecting the bid to come around $1 million, I would not even put it in for the year. I just think we've got so many other things that we need to deal with right now, and that these the optional expenditures, for me, if they're super high like this, we really have to question the validity of that.
And the airfield still works without it right now.
Yeah, I know. The warehouse parking is a little squeezed in there, but there's probably some things we could do over there to improve that. So, okay. And I think some of the tenants can also do some things over there.
I agree with David. Let's make a decision. Drop it.
All right, drop it. Perfect. Okay.
Hey, wait.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Do we have any public comment on this?
Yeah, I have one written public comment regarding pavement management. This is from Colin Butcher. Please consider a vast reduction in funds allocated for pavement management. A reduction in pavement management is one of the most viable routes to reduce the size of aircraft flying into Truckee. This offers a huge benefit to your neighbors who are plagued by large jet aircraft. It also paves the path for Truckee Tahoe Airport to return to what it was intended to be, a small community airport. Colin Butcher.
Perfect. Okay.
Kevin, how long is the other runway?
It's 7,500 feet long.
7.
So
7,000. Sorry, 7,000. One's 45, one's 7,000.
Yeah.
Sorry.
okay.
It's 100 feet wide by 7,000. Yeah. And let me switch that. So I had to get out of this presentation to get that map up.
Okay.
So talked about that already. The next item was Regional Housing Transit Agency Partnership. So as you remember from last year, we actually put $1 million of funding in that category, and then the board you're able to move that between those categories, during the year. And so it's really up to you on how you want to allocate those three. If those are still the three categories you want to use, and how much you might want to designate for each. So I'll just put that up there for discussion.
Who wants to go first? Go for it, Mary.
Well, so far in 2021, this is what we spent so far. This is what
Correct.
we budgeted.
This is what's spent.
So 450 of the million.
However, we've
A lot of
allocated 500,000 in this grant cycle that we're doing at the end of this year. Now,
That's true.
There'll be some
would
more.
that be
Hopefully.
paid out this year?
We hope it does. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've allocated $500,000.
And then the other two things, transit and housing, have added up to 450. So
We've spent it.
yeah, looking ahead to 2022, this seems like a reasonable number to continue.
I agree.
think so. Mhm.
Can I ask a question about this as the newbie here? So if we're talking about potential land acquisitions and potential greenhouse gas emission investment projects, would they fall under agency partnerships? I'm thinking not, but I didn't know if we should include them in this.
We have not included those in the past. GHG's had its own line item in the budget, and property acquisitions, we usually have just taken money from our unrestricted net assets to fund those.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, $1 million, just keep that one going.
Yes.
Mhm. Wait, any public comment on that one?
No public comment.
Okay.
The next one is the community sponsorship. So this is the $100,000. I do have and partnerships, but it's kind of part of that. But this is just talking about, and it's separate from the million. This is the $100,000 for the $0 to $3,000 one. So just the question is really just leave the 100,000.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, consensus there. All right.
Any public comment?
No public comment.
I'm sorry to chime in late. The bullet item that talks about the possibilities of a scholarship program for 2022.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kat mentioned that.
Yeah.
Which I think is worth consideration. That would actually take a pretty big chunk of this if that is part of this.
Yeah. Thank you, David, for bringing that up. That is something we're probably going to need Josh to help us out on that, and how, because the two of these items, these last two bullets, appreciate those were brought up at our budget or our workshop in July about whether or not we want to have a scholarship program. I think it's similar to how like the hospital district does through their foundation. I don't think they use property tax in that foundation to fund the scholarships, but I don't know. Kat might know more than I do, or I imagine does on that. Then the second item was, I think, something Mary had mentioned about, with our agency partnerships, do we want to add a challenge or a matching, program? We already have a requirement that they show an in-kind contribution or a substantial contribution, but then on top of that, you add matching funds. There was some conversation. I didn't want to lose those 2 points from that July workshop. So maybe we'll tackle that first one with the sponsorship or scholarships first.
I would like the scholarship idea, which we heard at the meeting. I like the idea. I would like it to be separate from community sponsorships. And if there's a question of using property tax for scholarships, we have lots of other revenue. If we're doing STEM scholarships, to me, that's an airport use. Would that be acceptable, Josh, with the FAA of using airport revenue for STEM sponsorships?
We can confirm on the FAA side, but just even on property tax side, I mean, if it was something like STEM and it showed a demonstrated, demonstrated connection to the airport and airport operations, it would sort of, from my perspective, pass the gift of public funds test and be something that the board could consider.
Isn't STEM what you were suggesting, Kat?
I think you're muted, Kat.
Sorry about that. I'm envisioning a scholarship program for kids who are going into some sort of aviation field. So it would be specific to aviation. I do think the hospital does use their foundation money for scholarship, but the sanitary district, they give a scholarship, and they don't do fundraising like the hospital does.
What sort of money does the hospital or the TSD put out? I mean, is it on the order of $2,000 or?
Well, TSD actually increased this year. They increased their scholarship from $1,000 to $4,000, so it would be a 4-year $1,000 grant. And the hospital is more, I don't know exactly. I want to say it's like $1,000. The fire districts give out like 1 or 2,000. North Tahoe PUD gives a couple thousand. They're not huge. And I would like for the airport one to be more significant, because I think that that cost is a deterrent for a lot of kids who want to go into aviation. It's so expensive. If you're doing it with your college degree, you're paying for your flight school on top of your tuition.
Define significant.
Yeah. So
if you're at Embry-Riddle, or there's one in Utah where it's a joint program, it's part of the college.
I wrote an article for Flying Magazine on that exact topic about 2 years ago, and it was about $100,000 to go through the Part 141, so that for a commercial pilot at one of these universities. So it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. What I'd like to see is a 4-year scholarship, although I've done some research on some other airports, and even like the Aviation Museum in Los Angeles give scholarships like this, and some of them don't start until your sophomore year. A lot of freshmen go in and have to get a lot of other stuff out of the way before they really get into gear for the aviation. So there's definitely more research that needs to be done, but what I'd like to see is minimum 5,000, and then have it be either a 3 or 4 year grant. So every year that you're still in the program and making, good grades and doing what you're supposed to do, you can qualify for another 5,000.
I do like the idea of at sophomore year, because a lot of kids start and don't really know what, I know one who was going to go to pilot, and then he changed his mind.
Yeah.
So
I'm one of those right here. So I was going to be an airline pilot. Now I'm running an airport. And it's true. You get in there and you start studying and you realize, oh, maybe I like this and I don't like that. So I think that's smart.
Yeah.
And that may make a reason to increase the number a little bit for 3 years rather than 4. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We're happy to do some research on that and get some information and bring it back at the next budget workshop.
Yeah.
So is the question that's before us right now, do we want whatever the scholarship, it sounds like there's consensus that we want to do the scholarship thing. Is it that money will come out of community sponsorships, or that money would be funded elsewhere and we can just make a decision about community sponsorships and move on?
I think it's part of the community sponsorship.
Okay, so whatever we would agree there is going to be taken off of the top of community sponsorships. Is that that's what we're asking right now? Okay, and we still think $100,000. I mean, I still think.
Well, it would. Yeah, I guess I would see it. Yeah, I mean, we could look at that. We do get really close on the. We get really close on on spending the community sponsorship funds every year. So if we ended up, dropping that down by 15,000 or 20,000.
Well, it'd be 5,000. 5,000.
Yeah, but is that just one, or just saying one scholarship?
I would like to make it more than that. You're talking just one scholarship, or 2, or 4. I don't think there's that many to do, but we got money. I'd like to put some money in this. I like the idea.
It could be its own line item. It doesn't have to come out of the community sponsorships. It can be part of agency partnership. We can make it its own line item.
I'm not worried about add new money. We can add new money.
Yeah.
So for 2022, I would say, if we could put 5,000 aside, that would be great. And obviously each year, if we're supporting kids throughout, their last 3 years of college, we're going to be at some point up to 15 a year. Or, we can start it and see how it goes, and then expand it and see what the need is. And, I don't even think it needs to be a college student. It could be someone who wants to go into aviation technology, work on the tech side, or even, maintenance or air traffic control or that sort of thing. I just think there are ways that we can support our local kids to do different things in aviation, and do it in a meaningful way.
How would we vet this? Is this something that we do internally that Mark Lamb does, or is this something, because you'll get applications next May?
Yeah.
And,
so if we wanted,
or is this something we hand off to the Community Foundation as part of the other thing because they've got more experience in vetting? Or is there a financial need component of this? I mean, how?
So what I'm thinking is that we have an ad hoc committee to explore what we want to see as far as applicants and how who rises to the top and what our values are. Do we want to? Is it going to be need based, or is sometimes it's need based first, and then people don't necessarily have a lot of need, and then it goes to the next person. And, years ago, the Community Foundation purchased a scholarship tool that was actually quite expensive. And since then, every single group in Tahoe uses their tool to do the scholarships. So it's all, and they can run their own scholarship program through it, but it is a central database so that we can see every single kid, and they all have to submit FAFSA, and we know what their need is, and we know what their grades are, and all that, and then either we could ask the Community Foundation to run it as part of their scholarship program, or we could just ask to use their software and do it in-house. But it's a very powerful tool, and it's made, the good thing is that it goes out to all the kids through the web portal at their high school. And so they can apply for all the scholarships through one portal instead of having to pick and choose and send them off to different places and that sort of thing.
Well, for the purposes of budgeting, I would say that if we are required to make a decision right now about whether the scholarship comes out of this money, I would be willing to say yes to that. And if we have an opportunity later on, if we decide to do more and we don't want to go into this fund, if that's an option, that would be great. I don't know, Kevin, exactly what you need from us from that bullet item.
The notes I have right now, I appreciate all of Kat's comments there and everyone else's. I've got notes to talk to these other GMs and people that run these programs and find out how TTSA or TSD and North Tahoe and find out how they're all doing it. We'll go do a little bit of research on that. I wouldn't get too hung up on where the money comes from. If you want to do 3 scholarships, then we would put $15,000 in there, and we could just do a line item in the budget that just says scholarships. And then I like the idea of creating an ad hoc committee. We could do that at another board meeting to help us put the thing together, whether we do it in-house or farm it out. We can look at that and see what's involved.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have...
Any new public comment on this?
Yeah.
No public comment.
Okay.
And then on this slide, there's the last bullet there. Mary, that was a comment that you brought up at that workshop. Is there anything you wanted to add to that? I mean, with matching or challenge requirements, or?
Yeah, I'm on my soapbox about there's a lot of property tax dollars amongst other agencies. They come and ask for money from us as who calls us the ATM. I just think that other people should be stepping up too. As property taxes are going up, there's a lot more money up here, and how do we get out of our silos and work for the benefit of all?
You run for Congress, that's how.
Yeah, against McClintock, you bet.
But on the agency partner aspect of that, in all seriousness, would this be something that the Community Foundation would now try to secure on our behalf? Like somebody comes and they want some money and and then the community foundation goes to some other agencies and says, do you want to participate in that? Or would that be something that for each ask that the airport board would then have to, or the district, I should say, would then have to initiate with other agencies? I
think how I would envision this, based on the program that we've already approved and adopted, that's actually being implemented right now, is that there's already either a substantial in-kind or cash match from another public agency. Once that's vetted out, it comes to the board, and maybe as soon as, or we're hoping in the fall, in December. Then I think you could talk about that and say, hey, we're willing to do this agency partnership, but we want you to go out and secure another $100,000 from another public agency before our funds become active. You have that ability when you're looking at the applications of what we want to fund, and say, well, we like what you're doing, but we see other agencies that could benefit from this and their constituents. You should go secure another 100,000, and then ours would be. You could do that, and that's already set up that way. You could do that when you vet those applications when they come before you.
I love that.
Maybe that's taken care of. Or you could decide it's good. You're not going to require it for something. So.
Yeah. I like the requirement. Yeah.
Okay. GHG funding. So. We put a line item every year in the budget for greenhouse gas funding and projects. So, the board, you can put whatever number you want in the budget for this. I will say this first bullet point, I didn't put this in there and I should have, but the proposal would be that the hangar tenants would pay for that. I should have added that. That'd be about a $30 addition on the hangar bill, and we could even just do it for a year, to fund that. But in our 2018 greenhouse gas reduction program, one of the big emitters that it lists for greenhouse gas were these smart block heaters. It would be a way to reduce that. And so we're trying to figure out how to incorporate some technology into the hangar rows where people can activate these block heaters from home. And for those that don't know what those are, it's very common for pilots to plug in these engines in the wintertime so that when they want to run them, they're already warm so they don't do damage. The challenge is they get left on sometimes for weeks and months without the aircraft being used. And so the idea is that we adopt some smart block heater technology. So that's one of those. And again, I would propose that be attached to the hangar bill, at least for a year for implementation. And we're still in the process of trying to figure out how a Wi-Fi system would work out there. Because they're metal hangars, there are issues there. I know Mike Cook, who's listening in, he's working on this to try and figure out what that solution is. So the rest of that list, you can kind of go down the list. Those are things that have been identified that we're looking at, plus new things. So I've got other projects that may come up throughout the year. So just wanted to get some thoughts on this slide.
I'll go first if nobody else wants to go first. Is that okay, Teresa?
Perfect.
Okay, super. On the Wi-Fi system for the hangars, I love the idea. I've actually, in my own hangar, I have an old cell phone there that I'm using on my data plan to actually be able to turn my heater on and off remotely. The $75,000 to $90,000 price range, I just find absolutely baffling that we would be looking to spend that much money on this. It just seems like I don't know what that would be buying, but that seems like an awful lot of money to invest in this. Not that I don't think we should do it, because I think we should do it. I just question whether or not that's going down the right road of doing this when we could, we know proof of concept in my own hangar, cell connection works. We've got, there's these little, router kind of things that will connect to a cell signal, and we could do something like that. So that's just a comment on that thing. The conversion of lighting systems to LED. I just wonder if we're talking about runway lighting. And I saw someplace else that it seemed like we were excluding runways, and I was concerned about whether or not we do have a concern about LED lights accumulating snow and not burning the snow off, if that is an issue. And the other one that I had a question about, just on that side is the Good Traveler program. I'm still not a huge fan of this program. There aren't really any offset projects that are anywhere near us. And I think sadly, because of the fires that we're incurring that are, steps away from us, we really need this in our local region. And that program does not really seem to have anything going on here. I'm still questioning whether or not we could use that $10,000 that we're giving to them for administrative purposes. If we could use that for something more local, we have now joined the Greenhouse Gas Coalition. All three core member agencies of that have had unanimous support for that for their boards, and I think maybe that $10,000 could be used toward that, because those are all regional things. The rest of the stuff, especially the solar generation, I love this idea so much, and I really think that that this is something that we should pursue.
So you agree with all of them except the Good Traveler?
Yeah, I think they're all really good. I question the cost of the Wi-Fi thing. I question whether, and I'm sure that, smarter minds than mine have already looked into making sure that the LEDs are compatible with a snow environment. And just the Good Traveler, again, I feel like we're sending $10,000 someplace else when we've just joined a coalition that could use that $10,000 locally.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, it's almost like if an old cell phone and a router, this is almost something that should be talked about in the pilot education outreach, because most everybody has an old cell phone around. That would be a lot cheaper to do this block heater idea. So, if you can put a little more effort into fleshing that out, Kevin.
Yeah, no, we can. And,
yeah, go on.
Well, I was just saying that the range in prices, we're still trying to explore this. And David brings up a good point. Mary, you bring up a good point that, we can put a requirement that, you can't leave a block heater plugged in permanently without some kind of a smart device that controls it. So we're just trying to find the technology out there that could help, pilots have an option to do that. And so we can look at those. I know there's a few folks that are using different things out there. So we don't want to spend that much money either, but we're just trying to get an idea of how to implement that GHG goal and get a viable option. So
what a pilot just plug it in, and you have no way of enforcing that, do you? If they just plug in and leave
the hangers regularly, we'll unplug them.
Oh,
I don't like doing that. We don't touch people's planes. We don't plug it from the wall. But that's also, I want to be careful that, when we're doing anything that's connected to an airplane, but we can have conversations with our tenants that, particularly people that plug airplanes in that might not fly the whole winter. That's just not a good use of energy. So we just have to talk with our tenants about that.
And the thing is that the electricity cost is borne by that whole row of hangars in all the older hangars. And therefore, then somebody who's not running a block heater is helping to offset and pay electricity for somebody who might leave it plugged in the whole time. And so that needs to be pushed out to the tenants that, this is in your own benefit. And
yeah,
we probably could have conversations with the PUD when we see excessive use. Because there is sort of a trend line, I would assume, on each of those meters on the different hangar rows.
Yeah.
So if one was plugged, that's something that SCADA, they remote read it, and we would know which rows maybe are using a full-time block heater.
Yeah.
So I like the idea. I just think that at some point the hangar tenants need to own the responsibility for it. It's buying electricity, and you can say, oh, well, that's not greenhouse gas. But they are generating it somewhere.
Yeah,
probably in Utah at a coal plant.
just as a reminder, our proposal was that they pay the cost for all of this. We're not advocating that the airport pay for any of the block heater. And I'm happy to work with more tenants about ways that they're doing it that we can push out to others. And then it may be just a policy that we have to send before the board to say that we don't allow block heaters to be plugged in if it's not on a smart device. I mean, it's a simple thing that we could do, and then give them, here are 3 options you could use to be compliant. It might just be getting a cell phone if that is working. There you go.
I love that idea, Kevin, because I feel like it's we're giving them some guidance on a technological solution that'll work. We know that they work because I know I'm not the only person who's done this. And the other aspect of it is that some of these pilots don't have block heaters, don't need block heaters, and probably would object, perhaps rightfully so, to having to subsidize this for the pilots that do choose to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just to answer the LED question, David, we don't have LED lights on the runway because of that. We need that heat to keep those melted. Pretty much most of the other places in the most of the rest of the airport is on LEDs, and so I put this in here last week, and then I went and looked at some other hangar rows that I thought had not been converted yet, and I realized all the hangar rows have been converted to LED lights, and so we'll look at that and see if we finished that GHG goal in our reduction plan. But I imagine there's still some lights around the airport we could convert. So that's what that is. Probably not $20,000 worth though.
Okay, thank you.
I would also put the pause on the Good Traveler program just to see. I think until we, and I, as I sent out my thoughts to everybody on these goals, these greenhouse gas emissions, where this, the education components, they're not very expensive, any of them. But we need to implement them. The greenhouse gas emissions in the Tranquility ads. There was consensus in January to do it, but I haven't seen it yet. Up at Unicom, we have information about the familiarization flights, but we don't have anything about greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gas on the website, you have to hunt around for it. It should be something that you see when you see on the website, when you open it up. This is real stuff. At Truckee Thursday, we should be letting the public know. So that's why I put these down in writing, so other board members could say, yes, I like these. No, I don't. We need consensus, but I would like all of these implemented none of them are big money, but they all need to be in your goals and your tasks. So that's where I'm asking, is there consensus on the 6 items I listed?
Under greenhouse gas, I see 5.
Pardon me?
I see 5.
This is on Mary's.
Kevin sent out. Yeah.
This is on mine. There's 6.
6 under the GHG one.
Well, the first one is one line. It carried over, Teresa.
I'll just reopen it and see if I can get it to pop up.
So we've run quite a few GHG ads. Are you thinking of something different than the ones we've already run?
I've seen the Tranquility ads. I have not seen. This is what I'm talking about. The less impact for greater good. This brochure.
That
okay. One. Yeah. That's what I want to see at Unicom. That's what I want to see at Truckee Thursday. That's what I want to see in the Tranquility. People need to see this. They're not seeing this. They don't realize this.
Yeah. So
users,
we might want
pilots.
Okay. Yes. I'll just say yes. We can do all those things.
Yeah, I agree with all of them.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, like, going back to the Good Traveler thing, I just think the user interface benefit to what they're doing, kiosk and all that stuff. I just feel like this is something we can do with signage if we're serious about doing it.
Well,
probably at a fraction of the cost, and then use that money.
Yeah. So just real quick on the good. Oh, sorry, David.
No, I was just going to say, and then just using that money toward regional greenhouse gas stuff instead of sending it off for something in Washington State.
Yes. So the flyer that Mary, just showed, that one, there's helping people understand what your GHG impact is, and then there's a call to action. And that's what the Good Travelers tried to do, is be that place for the 20 airports that have built that thing up, where someone can go, and it's mostly geared towards the typical traveler, that you can go in and you can pay and offset your carbon. They make the argument, this is them, that it doesn't matter if the carbon offset program is in the Midwest or if it's in California. If you're funding these programs and you can pick the ones you want, and I thought there were 2 in California, but they're up north, then you're offsetting that carbon. What it doesn't do a very good job of is helping people translate that into business aircraft. And that was the part by joining that maybe they could do. But yeah, we need to show people, here's your carbon, the pounds of carbon you're emitting, and here's what we want you to do about it. So that's what the Good Traveler was trying to do. And we don't have to join to send people there to use it. We already do that. We already send people there. But to be formally made part of it, then there's a membership fee. So that's fine. We don't have to put that on there, but we should tell people what we want you to do about it. If we're going to point out the carbon. And you're right, David, there's a local program that we can point people to, then make a donation to the airport. I don't know, to our forest management program or something.
A funding to the greenhouse gas collective program that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd also feel like because we do have this with Aviatrix, we do have this like program for this outreach and communication of this, and I just feel like that part of that, whatever that campaign for the greenhouse gas, however that's managed, should also have funding for signage at the airport, and that might address what Director Heather was talking about. I feel like that's the part that's missing, is just that. That in your face kind of stuff here. It's like if you pick up one of the the newspapers, you might see this, but if you walk through the terminal, you won't see this. So that's just what I think we could better use that money.
Well, we could do that. So I want to clarify one thing on the Good Travelers. We can definitely put more signage out in the terminal on this. Right now, the call to action is go to the Good Traveler and offset your carbon. I don't know that I would want to take that off until we had an alternative. Because right now, is there an alternative of what we're asking them to do? I don't want to just say you're emitting carbon and then not tell them some way to offset that.
Well, I think if correct me if I'm not remembering this correctly, but we actually looked into the amount of money that they were collecting, even from some of the bigger airfields.
Yeah, it's not a lot right now.
It's not a lot of money. So, and I think again, from my marketing background, the likelihood that somebody's going to walk through the lobby or the terminal and see that and go to another website and give them out of the website money, psychologically, I don't think people are going to do this. But if there is that signage there where every time they go there, or that the thing that resonated with me, it's like you take your jet from Truckee to San Carlos to Truckee to San Carlos, and you've emitted the same greenhouse gases as an average person does in a year. I think stuff like that, if that communication is met and it's consistent with those passengers in the jets, they or not even just the jets, but those of us in piston aircraft, also maybe they rethink the travel plans, or they're at least aware of that. And at some point, if we feel like for example, maybe we have, instead of a kiosk to send money to the Good Traveler program, we have a kiosk to donate money to our greenhouse gas coalition, which is local.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
That's just my thought on it. I don't really have a concrete idea of how we address it. I'm just hesitant about sending $10,000 someplace else when we know we're going to be looking for money to do stuff locally.
I agree that we ought to have some sort of display when you walk in. What is the effect of your flight, whether it's piston or jet or Surf Air. People, if they have it, they may not do anything with it. And I may be a skeptic enough that they won't, but we ought to at least put it in their face.
put it in their face more, because we've got quite a few ways we're doing that now, but we'll definitely beef that up and do some more.
More. I don't know how we really do it now.
Well, it's we've got it in different places, and there's flyers down in the lobby, but I agree there's more that we can do. We have been putting that out there.
Welcome to your vacation. Here's why you should feel guilty about flying your private jet into Truckee.
Yeah,
Let's have a camera so we can watch them salute.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on? I mean, we'll put a number in there. I think the total budget request right now, we've got like $270,000 that we would program in there. Obviously, that includes a bunch of money on block heaters and other things. Good travel. We could still put $250,000 in the budget for GHG, and then through the year you can decide how you want to use it. So.
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So next one.
Wait. Any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Okay. Next one.
Okay. So airport master plan update. We've kind of gone round and round on this, and we have a 2015 airport master plan that some would argue is still fairly, and at least in the airport community, it's still fairly current, or even in local government. Obviously, there's parts of it that could use some updating. There's parts of it that I think are still extremely relevant. I've read it multiple times in the last 2 months. Read it, went through it again this weekend, at a high level of detail. We did update the forecast chapter, but agree that in light of the tough summer we've had, that opening that up again and looking at it is a good idea. It's probably about $400,000 to really take on everything in there. Aside from the forecast, I was able to back out about $100K because I think the forecast is in pretty good shape, and that is a big part of a master plan for an airport. There is if we want to. I did put in here that the third runway submittal for the FAA. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the EP. In order to get an FAA determination on that, we do have to do a full NEPA EIS on it. And so maybe we do that this year, maybe we don't. But I just wanted to put that out there. That alone is probably $300,000 because it won't be a CADX and it won't get an EA. It'll definitely be a full EIS. So just wanted to throw that out there and just get your thoughts on what we want to do with that.
Well, I think we ought to discuss it in September. This is a big number.
I think that
agree.
if you can,
We've got that. It is a third runway. If it's what we do to 220, if the procedures, it's the load bearing capacity of the runway. I feel like all of this seems to fit together. I'm not entirely sure what to call it, but I almost feel like that we're missing an opportunity for a goal, which is addressing how traffic works here, moving traffic away from town, whatever we want to call it. That these things all kind of belong together in a collective discussion. And the only thing about this in the bullets that we've got here, the one question I had about this is other large involved studies should be tabled in 2022 to complete this work. I was just curious, Kevin, like what other kind of larger studies and projects are we talking about?
It would be, you'll notice I think I've got 6 or 7 little things in there. I consider those smaller, but if the board said we wanted to do like a pavement maintenance plan or a facility maintenance plan or some of these really big things, we don't, we got to, the master plan requires a lot of time. So we just need to clear some staff time to be able to work on it. But I don't know that I don't have anything in this presentation that I don't think we can accomplish with what we have right now.
Okay, understood. I mean, for me, the master plan, looking at the master plan is, I feel like is important, especially while we have the makeup of the board that we do, because I think we could make some good decisions based on some strategies with regard to that.
I took the quotes out of the resolution 2004-03. I carry it around. It was before I was on the board. There were 5 pilots on the board. And therefore, they had 3 resolutions, and I quoted them in the text that I sent you. You know, when the proportion of jets exceed 15% of the total count, the airport shall initiate airport master planning process. Number 2 is tied to complaints on runway 28 downwind, and so doesn't necessarily pertain because people have given up calling. And the 3rd one is when actual operations count for any rolling 12-month period exceeds either 60,000 operations or the proportion of jets exceed 15% of the total, the airport board shall initiate a process to control the tempo and times, frequency and hours of operations beyond those measured already taken in accordance with legally applicable measures. This was KB Foster, Steve Swigert, Connie Stevens, Michael Golden, and Don Starbird, who sat on the board and passed this resolution. So it's almost like if we have resolutions and we believe in them, then we're kind of have to open it.
Aren't we way beyond 15% jets?
We're 15 to 17% over the last couple of years.
Seems like more, Mary.
It does, doesn't it? It's a big footprint.
Well, but maybe it's because the size of the jets are bigger.
That might be, but I do think it's worth opening. I do think it's worth discussing the 1634 because particularly after this accident, it would go out over Prosser Dam and the sewage treatment plant and airport flats and a lot less people impacted. And it could be that it's only used for departures because the rivals, could be an issue with missed approaches. But we've worked really hard and we now have the new approach coming in over the lake onto 1-1. And then this could be for departures. And it wouldn't work all the time when wind is wrong, or, when the wind's out in certain places. And that's why I also said we need to do a windrow study looking at daytime wind. I mean, the whole idea of nighttime, when you average things out, again, I always go back to my snowplow analogy. If, with noise or with wind, when you average something out over 24 hours or 365 days, we don't need snow removal here. We only get 2 inches a day. So you have to take that into account, that what is the wind effects during our operating hours.
Agreed, and I also think this is what I mentioned before when that discussion came about 220, that with a runway 16 in the relatively calm winds on the day of that accident, it would have been a straight-in instrument approach to 16 with virtually no turning at all. So that's why I think we have to have that conversation in the context of all of the options available to us.
I would like all that. I would like the 700,000 in the budget to do this. And I would like it prioritized, that this becomes where we spend staff time.
I agree.
What are we pushing off?
Well, I think, I'll know better as we get into September and October. We've got the preliminary budget of what exactly, for instance, just not doing if we're not interested in doing the parking lot expansion over there, that saves some staff time. You start ticking those things off. And I didn't, when you get to the study section, there's not a lot of really involved, study work, as we get later into the presentation, that would take a substantial amount of staff time, but we would go into the same mode we got into in 2013 and 14 and then into 15 when we did the last, master plan. There'd be an ad hoc committee and then, a lot of community meetings and things like that.
I want to do it now because I think I love the board that we have right now. I think we are the board that has the stomach to do this. It's going to be a very, very long, expensive process to look into all of this. And it's likely that we are not going to likely see an outcome of this until this board is dramatically different. So I would hate to see any kind of a board change that would then restart the clock on the interest of doing this. So I really want to take advantage of the people that we've got here now to look at some of these big decisions we have to make.
So, given what you just said and how all these things tie together, it's almost like we need to wrestle with all these issues together.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Because I think they're all pieces on the same chessboard, and it's difficult to make a decision about one without considering how that affects the others, or how it'll affect our need for something. Like you mentioned, the wind study, looking at that in business hours. I'm quite confident if we look at that during business hours, it's going to make the 1634 thing seem a lot more reasonable. And if we look at the 1634 thing, then the need for doing something with 220 is less of an issue. And and then load bearing capacity of a new runway versus the current runway, all of these different things. Going back to what we in a previous meeting where I said, like, I'd like us as a board and as a staff to decide who our target aircraft customer is. What are we building this airport for? How big is that airplane? And what's the use case for that airplane? We've got so many restrictions that are imposed by the FAA on what we can and cannot do. But we've learned, in no small part thanks to you, Mary, in our last meeting, that we have decisions that we can make that will affect the downstream operations of this airport. And the example that I keep going to, when people talk about how did we get to the point where we have big jets, or how did the traffic get to at some point in time, a board decided to have runway, at that time 28, but 2911, to have that big runway. If that big runway had never been installed, we'd have a very different discussion right now. So, and I'm not advocating for the destruction of that runway or shortening it or anything until we have a giant conversation about who we want this airport to serve. And I feel like it's we often get into specifics. Do we want to do this or do we want to do that, without taking that step back and then having a top-down approach of what we envision this airport to be in 2030 or 2040, and what do we need to do right now to get to that point, to make it a great. It's a great airport now, to maintain it as a great airport and to increase its compatibility with the community that owns it. That's just my take on it.
So should there, go on.
My concern about 1634 is we're talking a long time. One, to get the FAA to put it on the plan, to figure out how we do it with the FAA and the impact on 220. And it concerns me. You talk about this board. The election is tomorrow. It's November 22. I don't know what's going to happen then. And my advocacy on 220 is something we could do by 2023, and that could, if that Challenger was coming in, yes, they could have turned in and landed on 220 without doing the circle the land thing, and it's something that could be effect. And it would, if it was 5,000 and 100 feet wide, I would hope that it would divert traffic away from 1129, and that has a measurable effect on the communities of Marcus Valley Estates, Ponderosa, Olympic Heights, and farther north. And that is a measurable impact that we should discuss, and that's one of the things we've got to discuss. I'm not prepared to vote to fund this runway 1634 till we have this discussion.
So do we need a workshop, a couple workshops, that to talk about all the stuff? Because the budget becomes what we live with, but if we don't know where we're going, then we're doing one-offs. And so it seems to me we need to develop this structure, the process of how we prioritize.
That's what we're here to do, right? Consensus, majority.
Yeah,
We don't-
I just wanted to put into context there. I'm looking at the Bombardier website right now. It's showing the landing distance for that aircraft to be 2,364 feet. That's how much that jet required to land. Runway 20 would have been more than suitable for that. Reno also would have been a suitable landing option for that aircraft. So I think I know there's a lot of discussion about if we extend that runway to 5,000 feet, it's like if you build it, they will come kind of a thing. But I think we know when we look at the performance requirements of these aircraft, that aircraft that could use the runway as it is now often opt to not use that runway. And I'm not sure, this is going back to what my concern was about this before. I don't believe that if we do extend the runway by a few hundred feet, that this is going to change that behavior. I think that that pilots will opt to continue to come in on 2.9 or 1.1, as this pilot opted to do this, and according to these performance specifications, runway 20 was an option.
And in fact, many aircraft were using 220 while 129 was under construction. So they are able. It's a lot of these corporates have standard operating procedures that say you will use the longest runway.
Yeah, and I do feel like if there was a 6,000 foot runway 16 and it was a virtual straight in from truck intersection, I think that would be the happy mix between the shorter runway and the bigger runway. It's like while we still have a 7,000 foot runway, knowing they don't require all of that in most meteorological conditions, that I think that most pilots coming in from truck intersection would opt for a straight in instrument approach to 16. Winds permitting, than they would to opt for circled land to 2.9 or 1.1, just because they're going to gain 1,000 feet of runway that they most likely don't need. That's just my feeling on it.
So if I could add, I agree with everything everyone's saying. These are all the things that we would go through as we looked at development alternatives for the airport. There's a whole section of the master plan process where we would dive into all of this at a high level of detail and get expert testimony and input on what do SOPs say at NetJets and ExoJets and Jet Suites and all those, would they land on a 5,000 versus a 7,000 versus a 6,000? All those things we would be able to, and we did some of that in 2014 and 15. There was some analysis of that third runway even back then. So I guess what I'm saying is, at least for the budget conversation, what I'm hearing is put some money in there for master planning. We might need another meeting or two to define how that would work, because I'll put this out there, is that I put in here that the NEPA process for EIS is pretty expensive, and I'll get even a tighter number on that. That would probably be a 2023 expense because we wouldn't even be able to get to that point of starting a NEPA process until you've gone through a lot of the master planning, and then we say, hey, this is feasible, we may want to do it, there's community will to spend $30 million on it, we're ready to, move forward. And then you commence that NEPA process so that you can get the FAA to actually give an opinion on your airport layout plan to see if they'll let you do it. Which, if we're willing to fund it, I imagine there's a path to do it. Again, as I've talked about before, there are impacts on that we would have to mitigate on the other two runways with the FAA, but that would all come out as part of that process.
I guess that I'm also thinking that we talked about a master plan. It came up in March 19th of this year, and there was consensus to issue 2 RFPs, one full and one update. And why would you even need to wait for the budget?
I've done 2 updates on that. Sorry, Barry.
I'm just saying that we could. Why aren't we issuing an RFP now? And why aren't we starting an ad hoc committee now? Why wait 4 more months to do this? I mean, to me, it's like, to me, it seems like we need to start working on this. And,
So just as a refresher on that, in 2 different meetings, I've talked about why I felt it was important not to issue that RFP right away. And both those meetings, it was on my GM report, and no one brought it up, so I've held off. One of them was to get the forecast done, because we spent $100,000 on that, and trying to be a really good manager, a fiduciary manager of the district's funds, I thought it was a waste of money to have somebody else redo that again. And it's very confusing to the consulting community when we're halfway through something and then we say we're going to throw that away, we're going to start over. So we did that forecast in June, and then in July I updated again and thought, hey, yeah, we probably do need to have some more master plan conversations. So that's kind of where we're at now. So I'm perfectly fine, putting out there and starting that RFP process if that's what the board would like to do. Now that
In
that
March,
forecast is complete.
in the March board meeting, Teresa said, "Hey, let's issue one for a full master plan and one just for an update." And that was kind of the consensus. Like, yeah, let's get it going, and then we can compare. Do we want a full one and do another forecast and incur that cost, or do we want it just to the update? But we've lost March 19th to April, May, June, July. Now it's 5 months later.
Yeah, well, you should have brought that up, Mary, when I brought it up a couple of months ago. Okay?
I have brought it up.
I'm telling you that we talked about this. So it was very confusing to tell the consulting community to provide a forecast and a master plan update when we're right in the middle of one. So I'm just saying, whether either being a good steward of our funding is important or it's not. And so I'm just saying, let us get the forecast done, which we did in June. So if I'm hearing the board right, I'm perfectly ready and prepared to go out and start that master plan RFP right now, if that's what everyone wants to do, now that we have the forecast.
And the forecast will also be tied to what we find out with the pavement management plan. And so the point being, in March, had we issued 2 RFPs, we might have been confusing to consultants, but I'm a consultant and we're used to being confused.
Yeah.
And the point being, that was the idea, is let's use one to just build off of a forecast and one to do a complete. And so I'd say, let's get something going. And I'll be on the ad hoc committee if somebody else wants to be.
I don't disagree with you on that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to raise the point that I brought this up. I didn't just ignore the advice and counsel I got from the board in March. I brought this up a couple of times since then. So,
Kevin, can you talk about what a sustainability chapter is?
So that's something that is more common in master plans now, where you actually have the consultant as part of that review process look at environmental sustainability, GHG. How do you make a green airport, green master plan? They incorporate all those things into it, and so that's what that is.
Great.
So we can't take action to create an ad hoc committee today, and we can't do it this afternoon because unless we add it. I don't know if we can add it.
What is the rule on just creating an ad hoc committee in the regular board meeting? I think we can create one, can't we?
So we technically can't create an ad. We want to be careful about creating an ad hoc committee, but by consensus, if it's related to an agenda item, we could have the board, agree to have you work with 2 board members in an ad hoc committee on an item, as long as it's related to something on the agenda.
That was a long-winded yes, I guess.
Lawyer talk.
So apologies, President Odette. Yeah, that was a long-winded yes. We can form. We can have an ad hoc committee start during the regular board meeting if we can tie it to something on the agenda.
So at this point, or in the next meeting at 4:30? It's not on the agenda for the next meeting. So at this point, can we create an ad hoc?
I think at this point, if there are 2 directors who want to work with Kevin on this issue and bring it back to a future agenda, that we could totally do that. So Mary, if there's somebody else who'd like to work with you on this, we can do that.
I'm willing if nobody else would rather do this.
Well, David, I apologize, but it doesn't seem appropriate, you and Mary, because you 2 are a team on this issue, and I think there ought to be a variety of opinions.
I think that's a great idea. Are you volunteering?
I guess I did.
Awesome.
Nicely done, David.
Congratulations, Rick. I'm very happy for you to step up.
Condolences, Rick. Just get rid of the smoke, will you?
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. It was good conversation. It's obviously.
Do we have any public comment?
Oh yeah.
No public comment.
It's obviously an important issue that we all get a little emotional about. I apologize for some of the emotion I showed, but I think it's important, and I agree that this is a good process that we need to get through.
We like you showing emotion.
Well, I don't know. Perfect. Thank you, Rick. So next item is, we are looking at this, and I don't have a set request yet. We're working on that through our O&M team, but things have changed, as we talked about often, and how busy the airport has become. We've for years, going back to 2018, we've used a lot of seasonal staffing to accomplish some of the things that we're wanting to do, and so we're relooking at that. We would like to make our front office reception position a permanent full-time position, and then I'm also working with our O&M team. They've been getting right down to the hour, the task of the work that they're doing, to look at how we want to staff that department, because we do have a couple of shifts that we feel are understaffed, and we think either converting or putting some new FTEs in that area would also be beneficial. So in September, we wanted to bring forward a proposal with specific personnel on that, but just for right now, it's just one of those discussion items. Any thoughts on that, or is it just bring something forward? It's
good for me.
What?
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. We'll bring you something in September that has how many employees we're thinking. Yeah.
I have a few thoughts in that. I think there's a benefit of having temporary seasonals, and just where we're getting hurt on CalPERS, I have a concern about making them full-time employees. I think there's benefits to having an access pool that's not full-time employees. So I'm not this is the last bullet. The other one is, I do not, and I've brought this up before, I have great concern about our staff doing baggage handling. And I know, since we're the FBO, that's done at Millionaire and all of these other entities, but these are public employees, and to me that just looks like a workers' comp issue waiting to happen. And these are public employees paid for with public tax dollars, and if there's a workers' comp, it's paid for by the public. I do not think we should be paying for luggage to be handling baggage. I just don't.
So, yeah, two things there. We're looking at how we use that winter and summer seasonal pool, and if there's better efficiency to combine some of those into permanent FTEs. And then the other thing we're looking at is, we will still have, whatever we put forward is a seasonal pool that we'll use to beef up a little bit in the summer and a little bit in the winter, but we'll bring that forward. And then I'm open to the rest of the board's thoughts on baggage handling. It's a common FBO service. These folks are paying fees to be here. We're not doing it for free. It's a very common service. We don't do a lot of it, but occasionally we will help with bags. We always have for a number of years. I'm not going to change that unless there's consensus by all of you that you want me to change that, what is considered a basic FBO service.
Well, just encourage Jets and Pampers Jets. Do you do baggage handling for planes that come in and tie down? No.
That's right.
So I missed what you were saying, Rick.
You missed what I was saying?
Well, I was trying to understand, are you asking if we do it, or are you saying?
No, I think it's this airport is so jet oriented. We give jets services that we don't give other people. If you come in your propeller plane and tie down, nobody's helping them with your luggage.
Well, it depends. So there are propeller aircraft that we do provide. If you don't want us to provide that service, I'll stop doing it. I'm just saying that anyone that comes in through the front of the house and pays a transient use fee, there are some basic services that as an FBO we have provided. And I'll just let you know, my 11 years here, we've gone back and forth on this customer service standard that we've had, where we've had boards that have said, no, don't provide any services to the jets, stay away from it. And then we've actually got, just a few years ago, it was, no, we should provide some of those basic levels of services that are provided at other FBOs. And if you don't want us providing or touching or doing any of that stuff, we won't do it. But those are some basic services that are provided anywhere you go in the industry. But again, we don't do a lot of it, but yeah, we will, help customers and people that are cycling in and out of the front of the house.
And on this point, I think it's totally appropriate for us to talk about the necessary staffing levels, and to the extent that's related to this issue. I mean, we could have that discussion, but we wouldn't be able to have the board, provide direction to staff on to stop our current practice or modify that. But we could certainly get direction to agendize that for a future meeting.
Please agendize.
So just customer service offerings for FBO services, is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah. I was there when Rush Limbaugh came to us when we still had the old building, and he said, his crew said that we were worse than New Delhi, India, because we wouldn't wash his dishes. And we said, that's not our public employees' job to wash your dishes, Rush.
We don't wash dishes, by the way.
I know we don't, but we haul ice and we do baggage handling and we cater, as Rick said, to the jets. And I think we need to, again, address who our customers are, and we need to be mindful that the public entity who provides half of our operating budget are also our customers.
Yeah, that's fine. We could have a conversation. There's a couple other aspects of that to keep in mind, as far as what we're asking these folks to do, and then the level of service that we provide directly reflects their willingness to do some of the things we're asking them to do. And so we got to balance that. If we treat them like trash, they won't listen to any of the noise abatement information that we're asking them to do, and they'll fly in the middle of the night and they'll do other things. So it's just something we want to balance. But I agree, there are a lot of FBO services we do not provide that Atlantic, Signature, and Millionaire do. A lot.
Do we treat people like trash? Do we treat anybody like trash?
No, we don't. But I'll say that I don't think we do. We do have some customers that think we do. That's pretty rare. That's pretty rare. But it can
everybody
happen.
Well.
Yeah, I agree. We do, but we do get complaints about some of the services we provide. But fortunately, it's not very often. Our O&M guys do a great job out there. But I really feel like it sounds like we need some more board input on the services you want us to provide and not provide out there. But just want us to balance all those things together. Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on that item?
No public comment.
Yeah, and again, maybe some emotions got there. Trash was not the right word to use. I know that no one's advocating we treat anyone like trash. But just, the level of customer service often indicates the level of acceptance that we get from some on things we ask them to do. Just all right, next item. All right. Just a request that came through our O&M team is to look at replacing, about every other year, we look at replacing a piece of equipment. This is a 25-year-old loader that we have. And what's interesting is the loaders have gotten bigger. So a 950 is now, from 25 years ago, is now the size of a 938. Here's a picture of the two kind of side by side. The one on the left, the 96 Caterpillar, that's a tier 0 a diesel, emissions machine, so it doesn't meet any air quality standard. The one on the right side is a tier 4. So there are some air quality benefits to doing it, but it's part of our equipment replacement program. We think we can get about $45,000 for the existing piece, so we wanted to put that in the budget for replacement.
Thing I noticed from those two photographs is that the air quality in 1996 was a lot better than. I realize it's not from 96, but yeah, I have no issue here. The only thing I was going to say was give us the money for greenhouse gas projects, but you're going to use that to offset the price of the new equipment, which seems reasonable to me.
Okay, well, we'll throw that in there. We'll see what it looks like with everything else. Oh, did you want to do public comment on that?
No public comment.
All right. Okay, so now just getting into a couple of other items and a few studies and then the other lists. So we think this is the year we figured out and cracked the nut on the warehouse sprinkler system. We're still trying to get we don't think it'll be more than 350, but putting in a dry system in the warehouse we're looking at heading that direction. Again, we've talked about this for a couple of different years now.
This is in the WAB?
Yeah, this is it's in the warehouse. So our warehouse is kind of where Makerspace and some of the other nonprofits are.
Is it a wide open space?
Yeah, so the ceiling is, and Harvey and Dave can comment if they've got better information, but it would go on the ceiling above things that have been built in there.
I just put sprinklers in a 2,800 square foot building and it was $12,000. This seems like a really big number.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Is this number based on COVID current situation like the gate was, or is this what we would expect it to be at any year?
So Hardy, you've done some work on this. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, this is just a preliminary figure that Peter gave me as I've carried that forward. We've made small adjustments for the change in the marketplace, but we don't know yet. It is a pretty complicated system. The warehouse is pretty intricate, large, bunch of separate spaces. And there's modifications to the water system. And if we do a dry system, there still are components that require the water system. So that was just our initial Peter Beaupre estimate at this point.
There's also prevailing wage. We have to pay prevailing wage on a lot of these jobs. And, it could be that we're getting, because I've heard a lot of folks talk about, supply chain and some of those things. And there may be some things we do need to wait out and see if things improve with cost. Just because things are a little weird. With what
everything this airport does is expensive.
Yeah.
Everything with prevailing wage, and when we're on the night, everything's expensive.
Yeah.
I've been a big advocate of this system. I think we've transformed the warehouse into essentially a small business park, and I'm a huge advocate of taking the next step. It's been a year and a half, 18 months or so since we completed some of the TI. In partnership, they did TI, we did our portion for the sustainable portions of the building, but I would highly recommend it, considering the use in there now.
Well, it would be interesting to get an RFP out, or see what's the real cost.
Yeah.
And then we can decide. I mean, you can put this in the budget with the star next to it, and then once we see what the real costs are, decide.
I like that idea. That's okay with everyone else. All right, perfect. Then the other one on this page was just the CalPERS unfunded actuarial liability. Kelly, do you have anything you want to put on that? Or any comments on that one?
No, it's just what we had spoken about at the last meeting when we agreed to do the 500 for this year, and just officially putting it in the budget for future.
Is the 2.9 million after the 500,000 we sent in August, or is it 2.9 minus 0.5 in December?
It's exactly as it says in there. It's the 2.9 that's at 12/31/20 based off the audit. We won't be able to get a true balance until we go through the whole process for next year.
But I guess what I'm asking is the $500,000 we just said in August, that, does that
Yes,
go
it
against the
reduces
2.9?
that.
Yeah, it reduces it to 2.4, give or take, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
Yes.
Still could be
Yeah, knock it
2.5,
down.
you know, the way, yeah. No, I think I'm in favor of this.
All
Well,
right.
I'm in favor of it, and you know I'm in favor of more because the negative arbitrage is large. But I'm willing to just leave it at 2.4, and 500, and you'll hear from me again.
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right, we'll include that in there.
Any
And then-
public comment?
Sorry, public comment?
No public comment.
All right. So yeah, here's some of the proposed, in addition to the master plan, we've talked about that. These are all things we think we can do. They're not very, I wouldn't call them large projects or substantial, but the first one is just looking at storage capacity analysis for our Jet A tanks and having our fuel farm. So at our fuel farm, the only thing we store over there is Jet A. We have some diesel and we have gas, but the Jet A is the one thing that we thought may need just a little bit of look as to our capacity and how fuel flows through there. It may be $2,000. I just put a number in there to have an expert come in and look at that. It's a pretty simple thing, but if we want to do that or not.
Kevin, I'm sorry. Do you want to go through the others before we comment?
Let's take each one at a time. Yeah, that'd be fine.
I don't mean to oversimplify this because I know that there's probably a lot more that I'm thinking about. I don't understand how we could not know this. If we're trying to help us, it says help us understand if our fuel farm is sized appropriately. How would we not know this based on the amount of fuel that we sell?
No, so part of it is looking at a lot of data over time as part of it. And it's really during those peak periods where we're taking a load a day and then trying to figure out within there. Because I think if you ask my staff, we got, and maybe this is okay to run out of fuel, but we would get into a certain situation where it's getting pretty low. And the other part of that is fuel availability and when the deliveries come. And so part of it is just, getting somebody, and AvFuel maybe will even provide this to us for free. I'm still researching some of this. To look at the flowage rates that are going through that farm during those peak operational periods, and whether or not we need another tank. But because I think if you just ask some of my ops folks, they would say, yeah, another tank would make sure that we would never run low during those peak operational periods. But we're not sure that is actually what we need to do. But just getting a little.
How much would another tank cost?
Dave, what do those tanks run?
Well, anymore, Kevin, I have not checked into it because we have not purchased a new tank or had a new tank come in 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So it would be challenging for me to put a number towards you.
We'd have to. That'd be the other thing they'd help us understand is what that price tag might be to do that. But part of it is just we had a very robust July in sales. You'll see that in the next period. And I know it may get to that question of, is that the direction the airport wants to go?
Did you almost run out in July?
What was that?
Did you almost run out of gas?
No, I mean we had enough in the truck, and Dave, you could maybe talk to that, and then we had a load on the way, so we felt okay, and the guys are very good about watching that. We don't run out of fuel. I mean that's not happened. Our guys are very good about that, but when a lot of fuel flows out, we're always watching our capacity there. We also want to make sure there's capacity for the emergency service providers that are there, and we always reserve enough for that. Dave, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or did I capture that right?
Yeah, no, you got that, Kevin. We did get down to the point this July where we had what we have in the trucks, which is 8,000 gallons and about 1,500 in the 3 tanks. So we were as low as we've ever been since we put the 3rd tank online.
I don't know how everybody else feels about this. I would be curious, just to get a rough estimate of how much a tank costs, because if you came back and told me a tank was $1 million, I'd say I'm okay with running low every now and then to avoid $1 million, tank. If the tank is super affordable, which I'm guessing there's no way in hell that it's super affordable, that, maybe this would be worth looking into. But
Yeah.
Can I tell you how much?
yeah.
These are older numbers. Keep in mind. But in 2001, the 12,000 gallon Jet A tank was 47,000 based on our assets. And then in 2000, we did the self-serve 100 low lead tank for 108,000. So obviously a few years ago, but just to give you an idea.
Well, 20 years ago.
True.
Not $1 million, but it's not
Not $1 million.
Yeah. Is there, Kevin or Dave, is there any safety issue? Like, if a tank runs too low, does it generate a vacuum or something that would be dangerous? Or is it just simply about if it runs out, it runs out?
There is no safety challenges with those tanks running low or out of fuel. So that's not a challenge. Everything is very well done in aviation fuel farms.
And then, Dave, as we see that the volume of fuel in the tank decrease, if we find that we need to order more, how long does it take between the time we order more fuel and the time the fuel arrives?
Well, we saw varying times this year due to transportation was the primary issue, but AvFuel has been a very strong provider and has been able to get fuel to us partly because of where we sit adjacent to the highway structure and having a very good trucking firm that is willing and capable to take the AvFuel orders and get them up to us they ranged anywhere from 1 to probably 3 days for the jet fuel. And 100 low lead is a much tougher one to get, and that could be anywhere from 5 to 7 days out due to where 100 low lead is refined and or stored.
Got it. Thanks. Then I would say, given that we're looking at this as a Jet A analysis, if we're looking at 1 to 3 days of Jet A and we know when we're starting to run low, I would say I don't see the value in spending this money for this.
That's fine. And we may not need to spend any money on it. It's kind of a conversation. This is the first in 4 meetings we're talking about the budget, but that is depending on the reliability of our supply chain. And I know that the industry, and I think it is a COVID related issue, but I know airports have struggled. Reno had flights canceled because they ran out of jet fuel. And if an international airport where the airline service has that problem, it kind of made us think. So that was just one of the things we're doing. We are being a branded AvFuel dealer. We get priority. They're branded in Reno too, and it was a pipeline issue there. It was just one of those things we were thinking about, and it may not be an issue, as we get into, supply chains heal from whatever COVID issues we're having there. But
I would agree to put it on hold.
Okay.
If you need consensus, I agree.
Well, yeah,
me too.
Yeah, I can check with AvFuel and see what and I think we would always hold back some fuel for firefighting and other folks that may drop in depending on the time of year that we see things. Okay, anyways, the other one, we don't have to answer this question tonight. We've got about 20 minutes. We're getting close to being done with at least this part of the meeting. Before we have to start prepping for the next meeting. But we do need to start talking about what we want to do with a long-term plan for our traffic control facilities. Again, don't have to solve that tonight, but eventually our shipping container tower will need, it's probably a 10-year facility. We're 3-4 years into it before we have to deconstruct it and rebuild it or do whatever we're going to do. So just a little bit of money for that. Also the ADIS and FDIS analysis, that's, changing from an AWAS to an airport terminal information system, which gives us a better reporting So there's just some money for some analysis there. The second thing is the paper strips for departure clearances.
My thought on this would be on the control tower study. I think that, as you mentioned, that this is a bigger issue. Like, what, if we build a proper tower, is it possibly, can it become an FAA tower? All that other stuff. I think that that's worth looking into, because it is what we have right now is kind of, so I would be in support of that. But I would like more information brought to the board about what does it mean if we were to construct a full, I don't want to say legit, but because what we've got now is legit, but if we were to construct a non-temporary structure there, how much would that cost, and what would it mean in terms of regulations, what we could do that we couldn't do now? And then on the ATIS thing, and I'm coming to you from a biased pilot on this, I don't even understand the analysis. Let's just do this. This is a good thing, and I'd rather see that 20 grand spent toward installing the system rather than an analysis that I'm guessing, unless I'm or underestimating something, is going to come back and tell us what every one of us pilots already know.
Get it?
How much does it cost? The analysis is 20,000. How much is to do this?
Do you have an idea of what a
I don't. There will be a contract modification for Midwest so they can handle the actual weather reporting portion and training, and that was presented during their contract negotiation period to the board. But I don't disagree with the concept of holding back the 20,000 and just pulling the trigger on the project as a whole. But if you could give me 30 to 45 days to finalize that estimate, I could return back with that.
Yeah. So
I would like to get your estimate of doing the system rather than studying it than doing it, because what I've heard is the AWAS has limitations, especially in smoky environments. So I think the ATIS system is what we should be doing. And I know you've got it as a pilot, but as a non-pilot, I think that's important. It adds safety to this airport.
Agreed.
And on the control tower, is this an FAA tower or is it 100% TRK?
So it would be 100% airport owned and maintained, because the FAA doesn't build towers. They'll tell you.
No,
not in the United States. They
do it in Afghanistan.
Yes, they build those kind of towers, but those towers kind of look like our tower. But we've got a great tower that's working great for what it needs to. It's just that long-term planning component of it. But usually the communities build the towers, like the tower at South Lake Tahoe is owned by and maintained by the city of South Lake Tahoe, and then when they can staff it, they have to pay for those controllers.
Which they don't staff.
Which they don't staff.
They don't pay to staff it.
No, they don't.
The city of South Lake Tahoe does not pay for that, so they don't have a tower. Their tower sits there, but it's empty.
Yeah, but they still maintain it.
So, Kevin, what I was alluding to when I was mentioning FAA on the tower was that my understanding was that right now we contract with Midwest for the ATC services, and they give us some really great people. That if we were ever to become an FAA staffed control tower, as opposed to paying for the Midwest services, we would have to build a non-temporary structure. That's what I was saying. So in terms of like what that non-temporary structure would mean in terms of ongoing future costs that we are currently spending on Midwest, that's the kind of thing I'd like to see, because we might be looking at a cost savings or maybe not, maybe a loss that's significant based on that change in operations.
Yeah, we can provide that. That's correct. How you put that. Okay, thank you. Just start making some notes. Okay, next slide.
Any public comment?
Sorry.
No public comment.
Just three more items that have kind of come up through different workshops that we have thought about. I know, Rick, you'd mentioned the EAA building. I put that in there. We'd also talked about a redesign of the website. That's a big fat guess, that number, that 75,000. It could be 25, it could be 100. I mean, we would want to go flesh that out if that's a goal of the board. We talked a little bit about a communications plan. And by the way, this is well, we still have a couple more slides. And then the idea of also replacing a hanger row with a shade hanger, where we're starting to look at some really expensive roof projects. Nothing imminent. We don't have imminent failure of roofs, but as we're coming down the next 5 to 10 years, we've got a couple of those alpha through hotel rows that come up for roofing that are 7 digits. And so do we want to decommission a hanger row and replace it with something else? So just a little bit of money to look at those things.
I'll start again if that's okay. The communications plan, I'm just curious to see we've been working with Aviatrix for quite a while now, and I thought actually when we first talked about Aviatrix back when Kat and I were in ACAT, that was the point of Aviatrix, is that they were going to be building a communications plan. So when I saw this, I kind of thought, well, wait, how did we not do this already? That was a question I had about that one. The website redesign, I agree. We absolutely need a website redesign. I think $75,000 is, if we pay $75,000 for a website redesign, we deserve it. I think that's all. I think that's an incredible amount of money to do that. And that's based on like current experience of setting up websites for Measure T and this kind of thing.
What's your bid, David?
I'm not bidding for this, but I'm just saying that I think that it would be a fraction of this cost to do that. But then again, like in Kevin's own admission, it was like this was ballpark.
There's all kinds of. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the replacement building for EAA. I'm kind of like I got in my note here. It's like, how would we spend $25,000 just to look into options? Because it seems to me that the options that we would come up with would be things that we know now. But if that's an oversimplification of the thing, my question would be, is the national EAA organization willing to participate in the expenses here? This seems like a lot of money to invest just in looking at where we might end up then having to come up with money for a facility for them. I would love, on this issue ongoing, I would love more direct participation from EAA on what to do with that. I feel like this is not our responsibility alone to bear for them. Mm-hmm. That's important to me.
I thought Kevin, you were going to talk to EAA and what were their ideas, and we haven't heard anything on that.
They canceled their board meeting, their EAA board meeting. I was going to go down and talk to them about that. I don't disagree. The proposal is just replace the current EAA building, not necessarily build a building for EAA. Now, they may occupy that building with other users, or they may not. Certain airports, provide space for them to meet. Others don't. We don't have to. You're right in that we don't have an obligation there. We don't have to replace the building. There may be other options around the airport down the road as we're looking at that. But when I was talking with Rick, he and I were just talking about this and mentioned that be something for us to at least discuss. There is some engineering and analysis that you have to do when you're looking at different types of structures to know if they're feasible, but it may not be that much money.
Is it just the cart before the horse? Have them come to us, tell us what they're thinking before we say, oh, here's 25,000 for.
Yeah, and as you can see, I talk about in there that it's more of looking for a home for some of our, it could be the Flying Club, the Civil Air Patrol, EAA, some of those different aeronautical users out there, but we don't have to do it. We just threw it out there. So
I would just love to see them take the lead on this, because it is, we don't have an obligation to provide space for them. I have no problem providing space for them, but I do have a problem in making big investments of taxpayer money for this process, because I feel like it's not just that, it's the staff time. We just talked about the airport, the master plan and all that this is going to start taking a lot of staff time. I think we need to prioritize the things that are truly our responsibility from the things that are not actually our responsibility.
Perfect. I appreciate that. I'll meet with the AA. I'll take this off, meet with the AA, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on the analysis of the shade hanger thing. I love this idea. I think, the discussion we have had in the past about a solar farm or something thereof on the airfield, and there was concern about Truckee Donner PUD and the costs and losing us as a customer and all that. Truckee Donner PUD has heard from the community loud and clear that the community does want some microgrid options. And I feel like we need to have that conversation with Truckee Donner PUD again, because I think that there is some appetite for the airport doing something along these lines. And I think the shade hanger thing is a great example. If we can have those panels on the top, as you'd said yourself, Kevin, it's like not everybody needs a completely enclosed hanger, especially in our environment. I think it's fantastic. I think it would possibly contribute to a solution for the microgrid thing. It would contribute to a solution for our hanger wait list. And I think it's I don't see a lot of downside to this.
Well, the downside would be if the pilots don't want it.
Yeah, and I've got in there that, some survey work would be in order. I do get requests for these. There are folks, and not everybody. We have a wide variety of income. That use the airport and have Cessna 172s. Things. There are folks that would move into this if it was a cheaper option. I don't know that we would fill it, but back up. I don't know that we would fill it. The current hangar tenants that are in a row that we have to decommission would all just take that. I think we would work with them over the course of a year and move people around until it was filled. But I have no doubt that we would fill the shade hangar with people on the wait list. But we would have to do some more surveying to figure out how that would all flow. I do get requests for it. That's why I just put it out there, because I've had some of our tenants say, wouldn't work here. It doesn't work at Snow Country Airport. Well, it does. They're done all over the place. And I have people that have asked us, requested these. So I think we would get use of it.
And the other aspect of this, I think, is if we don't know yet the future of electric aircraft, but if we expect that electric aircraft will catch on in the next, I think when we build something, we're not building it for a few years, we're building it for decades, that we're going to need places to plug aircraft in. So if we've got solar panels on the roof of shade hangers, that's a great option, especially for the transient operators. I agree with you, Kevin, that I think if my airplane were sitting out on the tarmac and I was awaiting a hangar and this became available, it would be a no-brainer for me to want to take this and then decide maybe I needed the full-time or the enclosed hangar or not. But I think, especially because we do consider that a number of our hangars are used by second homeowners whose airplanes might be based elsewhere. We've seen that in the forecasts. For those people, maybe they're thinking, hey, I'm only there for 4 or 5 days a month. The shade hanger would actually be fine for me. I just don't want my airplane out on the tarmac, unshielded out on the tarmac. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. And then also, again, worth opening that discussion with Truckee Donner PUD again, and maybe North Tahoe PUD again also.
Okay. So leave a little bit of money. I will further refine these. Some of these numbers are going to change, obviously, over the next couple of budget workshops, but I'm given a ballpark figure of what I think it would take. A rectitude may do this for us for free, so to kind of look at what that would take, or, there's lots of solar providers that would give us a quote on this also. So, all right.
Okay.
Any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, so we're now into the bonus round. Last 2 slides, and then we can take a little break before the before the board meeting, but we didn't get to goals, but we can tackle that, figure out how to tackle that. So these next two, and I just put them up like this. There's just 2 slides, and every budget cycle at the end, I always put some of the bigger ticket items, some of the ones that I, looking for some board input on. A lot of these are repeats. Some of them are new, but instead of going through each one, I can just ask if there's questions on this first page of things that you would like included or not included in the budget, or more information.
I'd like to hear the air show committee presentation before I weigh in on the first line item.
I agree.
Okay.
And that's in the next meeting, isn't it?
Well, it's coming in September. So at the next meeting in the GM report, I gave you a preview, just a copy of what they're thinking. And in that, you can give them, in the next meeting, you can give your thoughts on that we can convey to them. And then they're coming in September for a formal presentation and for action. So that, I agree. That
is their proposal. It's for 5 years, Kevin. That's a long time.
And that was what the previous one was for.
Well, I understand after we canceled 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
5 years seems like an awful long time. And is it a static air show or is it
it's a full
air show?
So in the next meeting, in the GM report, we're going to go through that. And then what I would like to do is take down all your comments, and then I'll convey that over to the committee. That's their proposal. That we didn't create that. We gave them the old one and said, tell us what you're thinking.
So I should send you my comments offline.
Oh, we
can talk about it in the next meeting, in the board meeting.
My question is on the network security, GIS, and web service equipment. Is this aged out? 183,000? Is that?
Yeah, I can get you a breakdown of what that is.
Yeah, that seemed high. I don't know the
yeah, we got a lot of
what it is
on this airport. I'll have some of it is cybersecurity, some other things that we're upgrading, but I'll have Mike Cook give you a menu of what that is.
Okay, $200,000 for continued flight procedure development. What is the latest anticipated something or other from with flight tech? I'm just curious because we had a 2023 date. Now I think I saw something out to 2024. And what's $200,000?
I'll give that to Hardy.
All right, excuse me. Smoke in my lungs. That is we're on timeline and we're on budget. The 200,000 was for the the contract portion that was approved by the board. So there's no special allocation. That just falls directly in line with the contract that the board approved for the flight procedure development.
Okay, so what is on timeline mean that we will have something?
It's actually in our next meeting.
Okay, we'll talk about it then. Okay, the 669 for facility maintenance plan, that kind of ties in also with the roofs and the hangars, right?
There's a little bit of that, and I will clean that up for you in September. There is a little bit there is some sprinkler money in there also. So okay. I'll make sure that those are all that you're getting that one number. But that's the number I pulled out of the facility maintenance plan. It does look like that the roof, the hangar door, some of those things that we've talked about that are in that plan will probably cost more than what was projected a year ago. And so it's so I can give you some. Like in there, there's also some things with updating the beacons and some things like that too.
Okay, so on this page, there's about $2.7 million of stuff on this page.
Yeah.
Just did a rough sum.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So at least on this page, you want a breakout of the security and equipment and a breakout of I can give you a breakout of the FMP work if that's what.
Yeah. And where is this fencing, the additional fencing, where?
So we'll get you a map of where that would go. It's kind of strategically placed in certain areas of the airport.
And a discussion and let us know why those areas.
Yeah, you can always pull these out at any of the other workshops and talk more about them. We'll provide information on that. Then the second page, is some generator replacement. The 190 for the water line connection, that was part of the agreement we made a year and a half ago. If the Soaring Ranch does the next phase, they put the water line in, and then we tie into it. And then you see just some of these other items that are on there. The Boys and Girls Club are going to come back to you and ask for a renewal of their agreement. So we just put that in there because you will get a request for that. Those are a little different than agency partnerships because they're service agreements, kind of like the air show, where they're agreeing to do certain things for a fee, and rather than partnering with another agency. Yeah, so any of those items that you want further information on.
The playground expansion, I'm not, this is to take it, what is it, for now it's 0 to 6-year-old, and then this was to take it 6 to 12-year-olds or
Just
something.
Add a couple features for a little older kids, yeah.
And I'm not in support of that
I am.
myself.
Rick Stevens is in favor of that.
Okay.
It's the most popular thing for the community at the airport.
Is
the playground. Then there's Red Truck, and then the community meeting rooms, and then, last, airport.
I would just be curious on $60,000 for playground expansion. What are we buying for $60,000? It does seem like a lot of money, but I agree with Rick that it's like this is an important community thing. But that's I'm not. I don't know how much that equipment.
We would if the board. That's a good item to flag that we can bring back and show you exactly what's in there. There is quite a bit of permitting and engineering and inspections on this kind of stuff because it is a public playground, more so than what you might do just on private property. But we can bring you that and then also show you what it is we would be doing.
And liability, what effect it has to have on our insurance.
Yeah, it's all included in there in our policy now. But
one last comment on the water line. Soaring Ranch is going to start construction on phase 2. So that's coming at you. I know it's happening because they asked me to stay in phase 2 and I opted out. So I'm not going to be in it.
So phase 2 is on the north side of Soaring Way. It's the private section that Jorger owns.
No,
or is it over? It's over
right
next to Rayleigh's. I'm just
between-
trying to get in my mind where
It's between Rayleigh's and Mountain Hardware and the lumber company.
Okay.
It's going to be more commercial and apartments. And they are in design work right now.
Okay.
I have to loop the water line down, and we agreed to pay a portion of that because our properties benefit from that.
The water line's important to us because it's fire flow.
Yeah.
Right. And to bring it across the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was related to stuff on the north side. Have they put that water line in? They put in the conduit?
No, they haven't done any part of that.
So they're going to have to cut up the street to bring it over, or they're going to bore.
Phase 2, yeah. I don't know how they're doing it with the town.
Okay.
The snow melt system that's off the table. The snow melt, got the bids in on that, and it was astronomically high. So we'll be back on that one to see what options we may have.
I'm looking at the $120,000 for the replacement to hangar 1 door. I'm having some heartburn on that when they pay all of $40,000 a year in rent for that building and for the 1,500 square foot office building. That gives me real heartburn. You could flag that. I am not in support of it.
Anyone else want us to remove that or leave it on?
Just a question about it. Do we have a safety issue there right now, or it's just doesn't look good, or what's the deal?
It's safe. We maintain it just like all of our other doors. It's just old, it's 1965, I think. But our guys do a great job, keeping it operational. We've done a lot of work on those buildings to buy 30 or 40 years of life in those facilities that will transcend multiple tenants. So we're not really trying to recover any of the work we've done with one particular tenant. These things will transcend the building for a long period of time. There's a lot of structural issues with putting on a new door that they need to look at, if any reinforcing or any other types of things that sometimes get involved in a big door like that. So it's just to kind of look at that and figure out if there's a solution. But I will say that also, there is some money in the FMP for that. We think it'll be more than what the FMP proposes, but we'll tidy those up and come back. And then in September, if you don't want to include it, you don't have to.
Okay. Is Arrow asking for this, or this is us?
They've not asked for it. This is us going through a facility maintenance plan and maintaining the buildings.
I would just by default, if we have nothing that's urgent to do, knowing that everything we do right now is going to cost an astronomical amount of money. If Sierra Arrow doesn't require this, if it's not a safety issue, I'm happy to defer it.
Let me convene with my O&M team on that, just to get their thoughts on what they know and what they've inspected there, and I can get back to you on it.
Why don't we ask Sierra Arrow if they would replace it?
I can ask them that.
Please do.
Yeah, Mountain Lion's doing pretty good with their charter ops.
Or even if they want it replaced.
Yeah, no, we brought it up because it's part of our FMP. It's just a project that's identified in there.
Yeah.
Anything else on this page? I mean, we're considering bringing forward possibly proposing matching 401 457 program. Quite a few of the other districts we've learned have some type of match. We offer a 401k, but we don't offer a match, and so we were looking at that to see if that's something that the board would at least entertain a proposal.
We offer a 457, not a 401k.
We do offer the 457?
We offer...
Yes, but it's not matched.
It's not matched.
Oh, so the matching, so it would be like contributing, matching the contribution.
Yeah.
So on top of what we put into CalPERS?
Yes.
Would you tell us what the fiscal impact of a match would be?
Kelly's done some preliminary numbers on that. We can...
Well, I don't need it right now, but I'd like to know what it is. I'm a big believer in matches to encourage people to contribute.
I'd be happy to put something together for you. And again, it just depends on how many people actually participate. We don't have 100% participation currently in our 457 plan. This could potentially improve those numbers, which would be great. And or adding a 401A. And then we were also kind of looking at it from the perspective of trying to even the benefit plan or structure for those who are classic members of CalPERS versus PEPRA, where there's quite a difference in match there.
Yeah, and we should probably find out after the compensation study comes back too, because that'll have some fiscal impact as well.
Yeah.
I talked with Shelley and Lauren. Shelley is the one who's doing the compensation study, and she's the one who gave us the data preliminarily that there are other districts that do those sorts of things.
Yeah, but what the dollars are.
Yeah.
Where we are and what this does long term.
Yeah. So we'll bring you back some more information on that. Coming on 410 here. Oh, sorry. Did you want to do public comment on any of those items?
Yeah, I have public comment.
Okay.
This comment is from Kimberly Pearson. Recently, it has become popular public knowledge that $250,000 a year of taxpayer dollars is being allocated for an annual air show. This is not an acceptable use of taxpayer dollars when, for example, affordable housing is so lacking and our library is an embarrassment to our community. The airport needs to be sustained entirely on user fees and not on taxes from the vast majority of residents that will never be able to afford the use of it. Colin Butcher. In regards to the air show, $275,000 is an astronomical number to fund an event that brings noise, pollution, and tremendous risk to our community. Many locals leave town specifically to avoid the annoyance of the air show over our homes. It is a fair assumption that after the events of the summer, many more will be fleeing the area as planes circle overhead. I hope you'll consider a substantial reallocation of funds towards noise abatement, specifically noise insulation measures for the most affected households. Imagine how many triple pane windows could be bought just for the cost of an air show alone. And that's it.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
That's an interesting idea in terms of who's our customer and how do we meet their needs.
Okay. The budgeting process, just to wrap up, unless there's any other comments on those last two slides. So obviously we'll go through, refine this. This is great comments, a very spirited conversation. Thank everybody for giving lots of good input and having lots of good dialogue. I think it makes for better budget when we can discuss all these things vigorously. So that's good. In September, on the 22nd, you'll get, or on the 17th, I think is the date, the week before, you'll get the first draft of the preliminary budget. We usually, and Kelly, help me if I'm. Does the first draft of the narrative come in October? Or are you able to? I don't think we do a narrative in September. Have we done a narrative in September before? Or we're going to try to. I guess we should just let the board know what's coming.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
Okay. So we'll work hard to get you a budget and a narrative, a preliminary first draft of that, and then obviously we have another meeting in October, and then the final budget's adopted December 1st. I'll also carve in some time for some more goals discussion. We were able to get through some good information that Mary sent out, and I'll also start to build, what goals might look like based on all the discussion that we've had, and I'll attach those to those upcoming meetings unless the board wants to have a special meeting on those. So with that, that's the end of the budget workshop, unless there's questions on that page.
Awesome.
May I move we adjourn?
I'll second.
Absolutely. Roll call.
All right. Vice President Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
President Odette.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
And Director Stevens.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll be adjourned for 15 minutes and then.
See you shortly.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you
people
all.
who joined in.
Yeah, appreciate it.